Hello, Manna24 Christian News audience. My name is Dr. Hyun Lee, 1.5 generation Korean American scholar practitioner, professor at Washington University of Science and Technology. It's truly an honor to be here with you today. I am super excited. I am joined by not only an amazing public servant, but also a good friend of mine and a former colleague. Today, I'm delighted to welcome Mr. Chap Peterson, a lawyer, law professor at George Mason University, and also former state senator representing Fairfax City, and now an author. So together we are going to unpack and learn about his life journey as a politician, as a lawyer, and as a man of faith. Well, Chap, so before we get into the details, so I want you to share a little bit about yourself and your background with our Manna24 Christian News audience.
Sure, thank you very much. Well, first of all, greetings to the audience. It's wonderful to be on. My name is Chap Peterson. I was born and raised in Fairfax City, Virginia. My parents had two other daughters besides me. I grew up as the only son in the family. I went to Fairfax High School, Williams College, and then eventually University of Virginia Law School. I began practicing law in 1994 and soon entered politics, was a city councilman, a state delegate, and eventually a state senator. Along the way, I built up a law practice, represented a number of Korean American businesses and individuals.
Well, thank you. So now we're going to focus on author Chap Peterson. So recently your book, amazing book, The Rebel, came out. And it's about interesting and unique perspectives on Virginia politics. And you shared this book, The Rebel, the story of a Democratic senator who fought against the COVID-19 lockdown. So personally, this book is so meaningful to me because I was able to translate this book for you in Korean. And it tells you about your background, your political career, but the highlight of this book is about the Virginia's response to COVID-19 and based on your experience. So what I want to ask you is what inspired you to write this book, and also what message would you like to share with the reader and also the audience, Manna24 News audience?
Thank you. Well, first of all, I wrote the book in 2023. I had run for re-election and did not win. I had been a Democratic senator for 16 years and was a senior Democrat. And during COVID-19, I had initially supported Governor Northam on his policies, but I got very concerned about the impact on small business. And my law practice was representing small businesses, particularly Korean-owned small business, whether it was a nail salon, whether it was a sandwich shop, whether it was a barber shop, and got very concerned about the impact on small businesses that could not reopen. The second thing, and even more important, was children. I have 4 children. They were all in public schools. The schools were shut down for 1 year during COVID. And to me, based on the science, it was not appropriate. The children were not physically at risk. They need to be back at school. And I felt like their lives were being wasted. And so I spoke up, I filed lawsuits, I brought legislation, I fought very hard to reopen the schools, to reopen business. And it made me very controversial, particularly with the Democratic Party. I was criticized and attacked, and it was hard. It was a hard time because I had been a loyal Democrat and I had a lot of friends in the Democratic Party, but I felt like I needed to do the right thing. And you say, well, what can we learn from this? Well, I think what I learned was that in America, the most important value we have is freedom. And the ability of people to make a choice for their family, their children, their own business is so important. That's why people come here. And I believe that that's a value worth fighting for, and I did fight for it. And like I said, I'm glad I did, and that's why I wrote the book Rebel, to talk about that.
You've represented many clients from many walks of life, and I'm sure you have a lot of stories and a lot of cases and clients that you handle and managed. And so I want you to share, is there one or two or the most interesting, memorable case that you want to share with us, maybe involving Korean American community or Korean American client?
Sure. I've represented thousands of Korean Americans, all sorts of, I've represented the Federation of Korean Associations for almost 20 years. I've represented churches. I've represented car washes and small businesses. I think probably the most interesting and maybe the most important case I have, and I know this is a Christian network, was I represented Shalom Presbyterian Church. It was an independent church located in Burke, Virginia, and it got into a dispute with another church, which was a sort of a parent church, that then tried to take the property away from my client. And we had a fight in court, and my client won. It's now up on appeal, which basically said that the congregation had the right to decide for themselves. In this case, it was a parent church that had taken their property based on a very obscure bylaw. My clients had not been aware of it. They had put $4 million of their own money into building this church and putting their own sweat and tears into it. And it was an important case because it also defended the American First Amendment, which is freedom of religion. So that's a case that I think may go to the United States Supreme Court. And so I've had many interesting cases, Hyun, but I think that may be the most interesting.
So you've served, as you mentioned, you served in the Senate for the 16 years, and you served in the House for 2 terms, and as a city councilman. But looking back your time as a legislator, is there any policies or any memorable policies that stands out the most? And also, if there's any other cases that you dealt with that impacted the most the Korean American community?
I think I've had 3 legislative items, which they're all very different, but I'm going to talk about all 3. But in 2004, I had the bill that legalized soju, the service of soju, which is a traditional Korean liquor. And obviously it was very popular with restaurant owners that wanted to be able to serve it and not get in legal trouble. But the bottom line is we got that legalized, and that was very helpful to Korean restaurant owners and helped them sort of build their business. That was number 1. Number 2 was something that you helped me with, Dr. Lee, and that was the founding of George Mason University campus in Korea, Songdo in Incheon. We founded the Songdo campus based on legislation in 2010. Since then, Dr. Lee and I have served on the board. We've been back there many times. We've grown that campus so it has 1,000 students. And it's allowed students also in Virginia to study in Korea, to host exchange students, and really built our relationship between Virginia and George Mason and Daehanminguk, the Republic of Korea. Number 3 was probably the most controversial, and Dr. Lee, you and I worked on this together. In the 2021 session, there was a bill that would have changed the admissions policy at Thomas Jefferson High School and gone from a merit-based admission, which is who has the best scores, who has the best grades, and made it based on equity, which would have brought in racial background and ethnic background and really would have limited the number of Asian students. And we felt very strongly that should not be the state law, that it should be a merit-based program. And so we defeated that bill in the state Senate. I took a lot of criticism for that. And, you know, that's fine. Politics is a tough business. But those are 3 issues where I felt like I spoke for the Korean community and got results.
So this is going back to you as an attorney, Peterson, and it's more of a mechanical and also practical side of the question. So as an attorney, what are the most important factors when you are picking or deciding which client that you would like to represent? That's question number 1. And the other question is, as for our Korean American audience, what advice would you give how to best approach the legal service?
I get approached by people all the time that want me to represent them, and I listen to people all the time. Before I select a client, it's always a question of, do I believe in this case? Is it doing the right thing? You know, am I helping somebody? And then secondly, is the client committed to it? Lots of times you as a lawyer might spend a lot of time, but the client themselves, they aren't committed to it. And you may be out there, but it becomes your cause and not the client's cause, and that's always very dangerous. So, do I believe in the case? Is the client committed? In terms of what I would tell the Korean community, choosing a lawyer is like going to a restaurant. You're going to get what you pay for, okay? So, if you want to get an attorney, if you want to go to McDonald's, that's fine. I'll go to McDonald's all the time. If you want to get the best meal, maybe you're taking your wife out on a date or your girlfriend out on a date, then you might pay a little bit more. Don't nickel or dime, okay? And I would always say, be upfront with your lawyer, tell him what your budget is, tell him what you want to accomplish, and that way you have honesty. And if the lawyer says that's not enough, he should say that. If he says I can do that, he should say that. And I would just say be honest with your attorney, but don't nickel and dime.
All right, we're getting to the last question here. The devoted Christian, Mr. Peterson. I know you've been very active at your church, and also I've seen you in action that you took parts in Bible studies during your time in Richmond as a state senator. So as a Christian, how would your faith really influence your work or you, both as a person, as an attorney, and also a public servant?
I think all Christians, and I'm like any other, you're constantly trying to improve and get better, and we're sinners and imperfect and trying to live the gospel. I think one of the best ways to do that is not just attend church, but for me, I've enjoyed education, whether I'm in a Bible study or whether I'm teaching. When my son was in high school, I led a high school Bible study for his friends, many who were on the football team or the wrestling team. I teach Bible study at my church. So I would say just constantly, investigating the Bible, reading the Bible, learning new stories. I'm 57 years old, and even now I'm learning new things. The other thing is, and I'm not good enough about this, and my wife actually has commented, and she's right, is the power of prayer. Sometimes we need to center ourselves in prayer. Sometimes we need to recognize as human beings that we're helpless, that there are circumstances that are beyond our control. Sometimes we feel hopeless, and relying on prayer. And by the way, you're very kind to say I'm a devoted Christian. I think I'm a Christian, and I recognize that with the power of prayer I can become a better Christian.
Well, Chap, thank you so much for sharing your story with us today, with your honesty, your service, and your friendship. So now, closing remark that you would like to share with our Manna24 Christian News audience?
Well, thank you. And thank you, Dr. Lee. And I've had the pleasure of serving with Dr. Lee in the Virginia Senate, who was a great leader in the Korean community and just in Fairfax County. So we have a book out called Rebel, which I think is Jahongcha. Jahongcha. And so that's the Korean version. This is the English version. Dr. Lee helped translate the Korean version. That will be coming out later this year in 2025. I am actually teaching in Korea at a law school there, Sogangdaehakyo Law School. And so I'll be over there and I'll have a chance to launch the book in Korean, and it will be available. So I hope people will order it because it talks about what it's like to represent modern Virginia, what it's like to represent a district like I did with 만나24TV. A lot of Koreans, and how we as Americans can work together and make this the best country.
만나에서 만나요.